What if the version of you've been chasing is actually the one you've been trying to return to all along? The one before the noise, before the burnout, before you started shrinking to fit a life that never really fit you. This isn't about starting over, it's about returning. Returning to your soul, returning to your truth, the version of you that has always been meant to be. Each week, we're going to offer up real stories, hard-earned wisdom, and practical tools from powerful returns to help you reconnect with who you are and why you're here. I'm your host, Bryan White, and this is The Return Project. Hello, everybody. In this episode of our mini-series on addiction and recovery, I have a guest that's going to share a story of a life that I'm going to call more than a life lived. He's walked through it. He's done it firsthand. He's experienced it. This is a man who is going to share his story of recovery, of addiction, all from a very firsthand experience. I'm going to pre-reference this a little bit that this story is going to be raw. It's going to be from the experience of someone who has truly lived the darkest side of the world. Across from me, I have Mike Jarrell. He is here to, share his wisdom, how he transformed his life, and give us some insight on a firsthand knowledge of what addiction really is, living through, experiencing, and walking out the other side. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to hear this story of your life. It's one that when I had the opportunity to read a bit about it, as I told the audience here, it's a life and a half that you've lived.
Yeah. It's been a long road. I'm just fixing to be 47 years old, and I think I've packed enough for two people in my life. But I was born to, like I said, teenage parents. My dad was only 16 or 17 when I was born. My mom was 18, almost 19. They're very young, both of them drug addicts themselves. And my biological dad was abusive. Later on in life, I went through some hypnotherapy and found out that I was there when he'd set my mother's face on fire. And that was the event that caused them to get divorced. But she met and married my stepdad when I was 2 years old. Now, and from that time is where my story mainly begins, because he's the only man I've ever known as my dad. I was too young to remember my biological father, and I haven't seen him since then. I know he's in prison for the rest of his life, but I was brutally abused by him from the time I was 2 until just shortly after I got out of the Army at 19. I came home, and finally I'd had enough of him hit me, and kind of blacked out from, some of the things I'd experienced over there. I don't tend to go into detail about that experience because that's where it made everything worse for me. But so as I grew up, I had a lot of hospital visits, 67 to be exact, before I was 16 years old. And that got me, a lot of times they put me on pain pills. And, so at an early age, being put on narcotic medications for pain, which I was constantly in because I was constantly in and out of the hospital, it really took a toll, besides all the trauma I was experiencing. So I kind of started an addiction. And, I can remember times of going through like the oxycodone 20 milligrams. I could go through 120 of those in 10 days, taking like 12 of those pills a day. So after I got home from the military, I was really messed up, really bad. And I didn't know how to deal with anything. I didn't know how to, to get through what was going through my head. So drugs was the remedy to it. It wasn't the problem. It was the remedy to everything I was thinking. So it was a hard thing to deal with, and I couldn't get no help. I tried to go to counselors, and back then, this is the late 90s. Counselors weren't as receptive. Mental health wasn't a huge deal. They didn't really know a whole lot about it. So you were told just to kind of suck it up and go about your day. That just wasn't the right thing. After I moved to Michigan from New Mexico, and I was hit my early 20s, I realized, hey, I'm free. I'm an adult now. I don't have these pressures on me. So I just kind of went buck wild. I went 110 for everything I did. And that included my drug usage. I pushed it to the limits, and it definitely took a toll on me. But I could never figure out what was going on. I just knew I had these depressing, hard, difficult thoughts. I thought about death a lot. I suffered through nightmares, and I didn't find out till many years later that I actually had PTSD. And then they actually told me about complex PTSD, which is the CPTSD, and from surviving all that trauma all these years. And, I understand that there's a lot of toxicity in this world, but I let people be toxic to me, and I was toxic myself because I didn't know how to navigate around those triggers. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what was going on with me. I just knew I didn't feel very good, but I hit it well. Most times in my life, people didn't even know I was using heroin, because I'd eventually traded that for traded the pills for heroin because it was cheaper, lasted a little bit longer, and I didn't need to do as much. And well, so I didn't think until I traded that for, I went from, in about 2-3 months time, I went from just a little bit to injecting about 3 grams a day. So yeah, and that's enough to kill a couple people. But that's how bad my addiction was, and I couldn't live without it. My body required it, but that's the only way I could function, the only way I could work, the only way I could deal with people. And I still struggle with that today sometimes. Me being around too many people gets me like overwhelmed and overstimulated, and it's really difficult. But I manage it now myself. But it took me a long time to realize what was going on. In fact, I ended up going to prison at 40 years old for selling drugs to support my habit. And that opened my eyes. And that's kind of where I took that step to say, hey, I need to do something. I need to change my life, and I need to not rely on anybody else. So once I got out of prison and I was on parole, I understood that it changed me, but I didn't really change my behaviors. And they actually got worse because now I don't care. I've already been in a dangerous situation. I just don't care. And when I started seeing this, I'm like, I'm going to end up back in here. So I left Michigan, left where I'd been for 20 years, and decided to start all over. And it took me a little bit. But once I moved here to Kentucky in 2021, I dropped everything. Or actually, I moved here in 2022. But before that is when I decided to stop using drugs. It took me about a month of being in a bathtub, vomiting, and going to the bathroom all over myself and just taking a shower and rinsing it off just to get through the hallucinations, the withdrawals. They were pretty bad. I did it that way because it was one of two things was going to happen. If I stayed on the drugs, I was going to definitely die. If I did it this way, because I tried rehabs over the years and it just wasn't working. The 12 steps didn't work. I mean, I tried to apply it, to my specific scenario. It all went out the window within seconds. So I sat in that bathtub and went through some of the worst withdrawals I've ever had in my life. And I did it. I said, it's either going to kill me or I'm going to make it through it. And I'm never going to want to touch the stuff again because of what I went through. And now, even if I were to see it now, I'd probably be sick to my stomach. Even talking about it kind of starts getting me a little queasy. So that was my real turning point. And so I started working when I moved here to Kentucky and started working hard. And I still wasn't happy though. And then I lost one of my brothers to suicide. And that's when it hit me right there. Cause I remembered that he was always the happy person, making everybody happy and laugh. And for him to do something like this was so unexpected that, maybe he found his peace. And if I can find some peace and light in this situation, I can find it in anything. So that's when I started taking the life coach courses and actually applying them to my life. And then started practicing mindfulness and learned about cognitive behavioral therapy and how I changed my mindset. And that started changing things. They started opening doors. And even then, even now today, I still struggle every once in a while. But now I've practiced it so much that now I can just, if I get a negative thought, it instantly changes. I just go right to something positive now. But it's taken me a lot of practice, a lot of hard work, sitting by myself, sometimes having conversations with myself, just really learning myself all over again, learning who I am and what I align with and my values and what I find important. So that's been I know that's a lot to take in, and there's a lot more I could go into detail, but I mean, it's just, I don't want to trigger somebody, and I don't want to give specifics, because I'm sure there's still things I've done out there that could probably don't have statute of limitations on them. So, but it's a complete turnaround from where I was even just 4 years ago. So, where I was still, and at that time, even like right before I was going to prison, I was mixing meth and heroin together, and I was doing probably 6 grams a day, 2 of each. And it just, cause I wanted to die. I didn't care. I was going to prison. I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about nobody else. I just wanted to rid myself, and I realized when I put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger and it didn't go off, that I was meant to be here for some reason. So,
wow, you walked through the fire and came out the other side.
Yes.
And there has to be an absolute purpose for that. There has to be a reason. As you said, you were put in that situation where the gun didn't go off. You share these kind of stories and you've walked this kind of life, and you're sitting here today in front of us is nothing more than a miracle.
Absolutely.
There's so many points in your life and in that story that you could have gone completely different directions. You could not be with us today. There's so many points where you did it the hard way. in your lifetime. Like, you fought to get where you are today.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I explain to people is like, because they're like, because my dad that raised me, he's passed on. My mom's passed on now, and he's the only dad I've ever known. And everybody's like, well, how can you forgive him for what he did? I said, because I look at it this way. Yes, what he did was wrong. And yes, it put me into this lifestyle. But at 15, 16 years old, I know right from wrong. I know what's good for me and what's not. But he also taught me something, that I'm strong enough to fight battles, that even after he was gone and out of the picture, that I was going to step into a world there where people were going to, put my life in jeopardy and try to take me out of this world, and couldn't, and that's what that taught me, was that I can handle anything. Yes, it wasn't it wasn't great. It wasn't fun to go through, but I learned something from it. And I realized later on that I have to look at this in a good light. I can't let this define who I am, because it's going to ruin my life. And it did for a long time. And a lot of people do. A lot of people want to compare trauma. My trauma is no comparison. It's not any better or any worse than anyone else's, but it was difficult. I mean, I've survived things that, like, I've had people try to attempt my life with, arsenic laced heroin, that I didn't even know about. I've had people try to stab me, I've been shot at. I was with one of the outlaw motorcycle clubs for a long time, followed in my dad's footsteps. And as much as that's still, it's not the lifestyle that they portray on the media, but there are elements to it that you have to understand, that if you're not a strong-willed person, if you're not strong in your moral capability, if you're not strong enough in your mind, it can take you down and take you out, and will, because you cross the wrong line with somebody, and somebody will, take that extreme, in those types of environments. They will take that extreme because it's completely normal for them.
So you walked through the fire, as we just said, onto the other side. And I want to know, how did you discover life coaching? How did you discover what it was that you wanted to do next, and how you were going to use the story and the life you'd lived to start shaping other people's lives, and tell them that if you can walk through it, so can they?
Well, I was working a night shift at a job, and we were working ungodly hours. I mean, we'd work 6, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And I'm like, this just is not what I want for my life. And I was thinking one night, there's got to be something, because when I was in the military, I did something that was based on psychology, was what my job was. I'm like, I can't use that, because I was administratively separated from the Army, which is fine. I would have to go back to college, but what can I do now to at least start this? Because I already know the information. And so I started doing some research, and I thought about going back to college for psychology. And I'm like, no, because I'm the type of person, I have no filter, and I have a lot of empathy, but I have no sympathy. And for the people out there that just, there's people out there that really need help, and there's people out there that just complain about every little bit of thing that, thinking it's the world's end. Though that's the type of people I'd say, listen, this is not, and I'm just going to be real with them, because I don't sugarcoat anything, and I just don't want to get sued, to be honest.
Yep, I get that very much so. Let's actually dissect that a little bit, and so that people really understand what the difference between having that empathy and being able to coach somebody,
right,
and somebody who's just looking for sympathy.
Right. Well, it's like this. Like, if somebody really needs help, they're not going to actually just come to you. And, with coaching, you have to be like their best friend. You have to start from the here and now, because chances are most people have been to counseling. They know their diagnosis. They know what they're going through. I don't need to rehash that for them. What I try to do is I try to coach them and start live in the present, start from here and now, and be presently available. Don't worry about the past. It's gone. The future hasn't happened. And the steps you take today make your future. Everything you do now determines your future. So you get to decide your destiny. So that's kind of where I coach people and try to encourage them that changing your thought process and how you see, looking at things through perspective instead of our own perception, opens up a whole world of opportunities. Whereas if somebody, in having empathy, is understanding and looking at it, putting yourself in their shoes and understanding what they've been through, and trying to guide them into where they can, put themselves in other situations, and understand that it's not always about you. When somebody says, you're a terrible person, and it makes you feel down, it doesn't mean that you are a terrible person. You know better. It just means that person has something inside of them, and that you can look at them and go, okay, and be calm about it, and knowing that it's something inside of them. That's not your problem. Whereas somebody just wants sympathy, they'll complain about every little thing. Oh, this didn't go right, or I didn't get my kids to school on time, and nothing ever works out. Well, it's just, because you can change a lot of your situation. So if you're just, everything's always going wrong and you don't want to do nothing about it, that's somebody that's looking for sympathy, and to me, sympathy should be used for something like a funeral, or, I'm sorry for your loss. It shouldn't be used in everyday life, because we absolutely have control of our lives. We are the we're the what is that? We're the creators of our destiny. We are in charge of what we do. You know what I'm saying? And it's about being open minded. We don't have to live in a world where, the baby boomer age, where you have to go to college, you have to work in the same job for 20. That doesn't work anymore. You have to understand that you can literally think about something, have that desire, and go after it. Two of the books I've really read that I like is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, I think, or yes, Napoleon Hill or Neville Goddard, one of the two. And then Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, which is a journal of his life and about Stoicism. And those two books are really, really powerful in, understanding yourself.
What a space it is to really start being able to understand ourselves and start to make those transitions. I'm very curious to know, how did you start to begin to change your beliefs and your self-love? You come from a place that there probably was some pretty toxic and messed up beliefs and some really poor self-love, and you radically changed that. What were some of the core components, and how did you start to alter those beliefs, those thoughts, and that mindset around those?
What I did was when I wrote my book, How to Find Happiness in the Worst Possible Times, that was a core program I had, was that was one of because to get the Master Life Coach certification, I had to take 4 others. And one of those was happiness. And the whole premise behind it was when I realized that our belief systems could be limiting or empowering. And I'm like, wait a minute here, that makes sense. And it's the number one reason why we don't change or we don't grow, but it's the second step. There's 6 steps to changing that. But limiting beliefs is the biggest one. And so when I went down, I wrote down everything that I'd ever been taught or what I thought about myself from other people or anything that just didn't make me feel good. And I wrote that down. Then I wrote down the things that did make me feel good. And I'm like, okay, so they're saying if I can challenge these beliefs, it's like the table leg method. A table has 4 legs. It can stand on 3, but it can't stand on 2. So if you can find 3 reasons that challenge that belief, doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that you've challenged it and that you can find something else to replace it with. So I started going through everything in my life. Okay, what do I believe about myself from this and from this and from this? And it took me about a month to do. And I just started taking each one of those. And when I'd figure them out and I'd be in a situation where that would pop up, I would start changing it with something more empowering. And it took a lot of practice. I had to actually practice, these things because we all get triggered. And anytime I had a trigger come up, I named it, looked where it came from, and then I replaced it with something a lot more positive.
Ooh,
so
I like it. And on the aspect of self-love, how did you start to change your mindset and your belief about that? How did you start to love yourself again?
Well, a lot of my relationships have been toxic because I allowed, people, like, I take people back if they cheated on me or lied to me. And those are 2 of the things I can't stand the most. But I just started looking at it like, if I can't, I show people how to love me. I teach these people how to love me because when you're getting to know someone, they can't make you happy or can't love you if you don't know how to love yourself. So I started just being selfish for my own self. Like if I couldn't help somebody, I said, look, I can't help you right now, because I'm the type of person, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I have to do it no matter what. I will not allow myself to not do it. There's no excuse for it to ever get out of it at any time to me. And I hold myself to that standard. So if I can't help somebody, I just say, hey, look, I got to take care of this. I got to take care of me first. And I just started putting myself first because that's ultimately what it is, because nobody's going to do it for me. Nobody's going to be there unless I'm there for myself.
Okay. So you're summing this up almost better than I wrote it in my own book. The book I've got behind me here, you can see, is called Get Selfish, Filling Your Bucket First. And I'm sitting here relating to everything you're saying over the top, because in my philosophy is that you cannot pour out with abundance to other people until your cup is full. And if your cup is full of holes, toxic and muddy, invasive weeds have crept in, you're held together by Band-Aids and cover-ups, well, what good is that going to do when the faster you fill it, the faster it pours out?
Absolutely.
Until you have that ability to have a full brimming bucket that's clean and beautiful and inside and out.
Yes.
How can you create those extra ripples and pour out to other people? If you've got nothing in your bucket, nothing in your tank, how do we pour out? So I love what you're saying. And I like that you even said about getting selfish, because it is that philosophy that it is about sometimes putting ourselves first and making sure that we are healthy, we are loved, and we know who we are.
Yep. And today, in today's society, everybody preaches that it's not okay to be selfish, but you're not being really selfish in a bad way. You're being selfish for your time and your what you need in life, and you matter. You're the most important person in your life. You have to invest in yourself. And it's like, I've had people come to me, and what I've trying to, in order, like, not to trade so much time for money, I've started offering my coaching programs free for those in need, because here's the thing: if I can get just a few people that see how it works, I can get more. But and then ultimately the rest will come. It's not that I don't need to make money, but I also tell people, here's the thing: yes, it's expensive. The reason why it's expensive is because you need to invest in yourself the most. That's the best investment you're ever going to do, because it's going to open a world of opportunities. So if you'd spend $300-400 on or $1,200 on an iPhone, why wouldn't you do it on making yourself better? I mean, you are more important than that phone is. You know what I'm saying? So why not invest in
Absolutely, I do.
yourself? That is the biggest thing. What's that?
Yeah, I just want to take this forward here because you got my brain really spinning on a few things that have really got me really fired up here. That you're talking about investing into yourself and really putting yourself first. I'm really curious now to dive into the aspects of where did you start to invest in yourself and how did you do that? When you came from a life where I'm assuming that, you probably don't have thousands of dollars to go dropping. There's so many of us in a position that we're coming out of recovery where we don't have these giant exploding wallets to start investing in ourselves. We don't
No.
have that financial backing. How did someone like yourself, that I'm assuming exactly in that scenario, start to invest in yourself?
Well, what I did was I started small. Once I got clean, I started taking it day by day, and I started focusing on what I could do right now. It's always about focusing on what you can do within your capabilities right now. When you start doing that and you start seeing results, because little steps make huge wins, but you have to do something. Okay, you can't just sit around and do nothing. You can't wait around for it to come to you, because getting off the drugs is the easy part. Living in recovery and not running from what you were running from is the absolute hardest part. And you're going to be tested more than you ever were when you are on drugs. I have found.
Can you do me a favor? I gotta cut. Can you say that exact phrase one more time? Because I want that crystal clear to people.
Getting off drugs is the easy part, and living in recovery and not running from what you were running from is the absolute hardest thing you'll ever do. And being able to look in the mirror, because here's the thing: if you're going to be tested so enormously in recovery to make sure you don't go back there, to see if you're ready, that you have to be prepared for it. So you have to do any and everything you can to pour into yourself and make sure you stay focused on what's important. And that's day by day living a clean life. Okay. And the more you pour into yourself, the more you find in positivity, the more you find in recovery and mindfulness and changing your mindset, the more you put into yourself, the easier it gets to stay away from it.
Let's talk about the consistency of that, though, because that's hard for people sometimes. We get into these, we're really good for a week, we're really good for a month, and then we fall down, or we lose track of it for a couple of days. How do we not beat ourselves up or just give up altogether? How do we build that consistency to keep going?
Well, understand that sometimes relapse is a part of it, and it's, again, just changing how you see every situation, which takes practice. But you got to start with something small. But even if you relapse, you can't start, like, I've known people that were 20 years and get into something that was really stressful and drink one night and then say, what, I can't do this. I messed up, but they want to start their date over. You can't do that, because that's going to push that instills in you that, okay, I got to start all over. And it kind of gives you a feeling of hopelessness, because you have to start from square one. Don't do that. Just keep going forward, because there's, like they always say, there's a reason why the windshield is so big and the rear view so small. You got to keep going forward, because you can't go back that way. There's nothing back there for you. The way is forward. So in order to do that, you just have to understand, okay, I made a mistake, own it. Accountability is huge. That's number one. Gratitude is number two. Instead of worrying, thinking about things that you don't have, or that are hard on you, think about the things that you do have and that are going good, and that'll kind of change your thinking. And then also forgiveness for yourself and other people, because here's the thing: people have the idea of forgiveness wrong. They think that forgiveness is okaying what other people did to them or what they did to themselves, and it's not. Forgiveness is according to the Mayo Clinic, forgiveness is the deliberate action of letting go of anger and resentment. It's all you're doing is not letting it define you, not letting it hurt you anymore. Because here's the thing, not forgiving yourself or others is like taking poison and expecting someone else to die.
One, you just answered my next question right out of my brain there. We were going to dig into the area of forgiveness, but let's dissect it even more, because to me, forgiveness is crucial, massive, and such a key important piece. But I want to know from your perspective, how much of a weight did finding forgiveness for yourself and for others lift off you? How freeing was that feeling of forgiveness?
It was huge. And here's the thing, that's where I started. I started with the gratefulness second, and I should have started with it first, but I started with forgiveness first. And what I did was I was in a prison boot camp. So this is the second time I've been in boot camp. I'm getting ready. I have to go through this program, and I get to go home on parole. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, and we had 20 guys clamoring over 6 sinks trying to shave our faces. Boot camp is not the funnest thing in the world. But when I would get up to a mirror, I would start looking in the mirror and say, I love who I see today. I forgive myself. I'm a good person, and I'm doing better. I'm paying my debts, and I'm going to move forward. And about the third morning I started doing that, there was 20, 30 guys in his head trying to shave, and everybody had tears in their eyes because nobody else could do that. But I forced myself to do it. Say, look, I've got to forgive myself. I got to forgive everybody else. And I got to start being grateful that I'm about to go home. I was, sentenced on a first offense to 2 to 20 years. And if I didn't straighten up, I could keep going back until that 20-year sentence was the max. I lived in a state with 100% minimums for prison with truths in sentencing. And so they call it doing time on the installment plan. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get off parole the first time, which is very difficult in prison. It's very difficult. They don't make it easy. And I made that happen, but I had a determination. Started with that desire, that determination. I was already, relearning discipline again. And so I just said, you know what? I'm going to forgive myself, forgive everybody else, because that's going to take a lot of this away from me. Because when I was in there, I read The Secret and The Four Gifts were the 2 books I started with. And that instilled something in me that really, really changed and started my journey, is that without gratitude and forgiveness, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to go anywhere.
I'm kind of laughing because I'm starting to think that you wrote my book that I wrote here, because we're talking about the same things. I'm going, holy cow. But secondly,
it's just confirmation that the information is valid, and it's backed by science, but that it's a system that works,
Yeah.
And the more people see that more people are coming out and expressing these values, these techniques, these tools, the more people see that it actually does work.
And I'm getting a little emotional myself because I'm thinking about my morning routine and looking in the mirror, because that was a big piece of mine, the years ago when I looked in that mirror. And as men, this is like crucial. As men specifically, when we get up in the morning and we look in the mirror and we can't stare ourselves in the face or see who's looking back, that's hard.
Yes,
and I want to let's dive.
I would tell you, sorry, I don't mean to cut, because it's society. And let's put this out here right now. Society tells men, and we have such a weight on our shoulders, men, that we cannot be vulnerable. We cannot be emotional. And I was taught that myself. You can't cry. You can't do this stuff. That men don't do that. And that's absolutely not true. I don't do it in front of people, but I will tell you, when I need to, I will go walk myself away. I need to go like we just had a coworker commit suicide the other day, and the owner came in and was talking to us at work, and me and some of the other guys that knew this man were getting emotional. I said, I got to go get a soda and compose myself. And he understood. I don't do it in front of people, but sometimes you have to let that out, and it's okay. It's okay to show some vulnerability. Now, you have to be careful of that, because don't show it to somebody that's going to be toxic and use that to weaponize it. But it is okay to be vulnerable to the safe people. You have to find safe people. And the more you start changing your mindset, you're going to lose those old people. Here's a big one. You're going to lose those people, and you're going to think, oh my God, it's alone. But you need that time, that isolation, that alone time to figure out yourself and what you want. And then eventually the better people start coming in, because you have to get rid of the old to bring in the new. So it's just an important point.
You've walked yourself through all these changes. You've done the hard work. You're doing this on a daily aspect.
I'm still doing it.
It leads me to wonder, when you started making these changes, did you start to notice new doors opening, new experiences coming your way, like the world around you? How did it change as you've been changing?
I didn't start noticing some opportunities until I'd lost a job that I was working like 6-7 days a week, and I had 7 months. I live in a real small town here in Kentucky. Matter of fact, I live in a town that Kentucky Fried Chicken started in Corbin, and I couldn't find a job for several months. So I decided, I said, I'm not going to sit around here and pout and, be down and depressed. I got to do something. So that's where I started doing all this. I started with the studies, wrote some books. I started joining other groups on Facebook. I started actually doing TikTok videos, which I was never comfortable with. Now I do them all the time. And that's where most of my content is. Excuse me. But I noticed that people were starting to do like podcasts. They were starting to, hey, we want your story. We want to hear your story. And the more I did that, the more I focused on it, the more it came, and the more I worked on, the more it came. This last year, I've had to last year I was in a relationship. I realized it was starting to get toxic. I left, said, look, I got to go. And so I took some time to, learn those lessons that I still needed to learn, because there was some there still there. Like I said, the journey is the destination. I'm still working on myself. I still find things that trigger me, and from old things, because there's 30 something years of trauma or even 20 something years of trauma is not going to go away overnight. But I acknowledge that. I tell people all the time, look, sometimes I'm a mess, but I don't make my emotions anybody else's responsibility. I name them, I process them, and I let them go, and I'm okay. I'll never make it somebody else's responsibility, and I'll never say you made me feel this way, because nobody can make you feel a certain way. I live more in my thoughts than I do emotions, because thoughts can create emotions, which can create behaviors. But if I separate the thought and the emotional part, it allows me to think about it rationally. And that goes back to the cognitive function, which is addicts. We lose that, but you can get it back. You can work on it and get it back. It just takes some reframing. It's like, if your life's a movie, how would you want that movie to be portrayed? Would you want it to be portrayed as this drug addict and it's always down and depressed? Or do you want to rewrite that story and portray something different? And that's how they tell you to look at it, is look at it as a movie. What do you want to write in this new script? Because it's ultimately yours. You can be anybody and do anything you want to do. It's up to you to change it. And as you change, you're going to find that more and more opportunities happen. Like I've been on calls with JT Fox, the billionaire. Been on calls with Dean Graziosi, some of these guys, big guys. I wasn't ready for some of those calls at the time, but I'm focusing, and I'm learning new stuff. I research a lot, especially business, because I'm not good at marketing. I have 3 books that should be selling off the charts, and I'm not good at marketing, but I'm getting there. And there's things that I still get tested on daily. I still go through struggles. There's things that come my way, and I even get guys at work like, this has been a hell of a day. How are you just staying calm? Because if I can't change it and I can't control it, it ain't for me to worry about, because it's not going to matter anyway. You're not going to do nothing about it because you can't. Fix the things I can and move on.
I love that mentality. I'm a big believer in the day-to-day philosophy of, if it is out of my control and I cannot fix it or deal with it in the here and now, or there's not a solution that I can do in my power, I'm not going to let it tip me over the edge. I'm not going to lose my mind about it. And I want to be able to focus on the positive sides of, okay, what can I do about this? How can I look at this? And what is going to be the outcome that I want to have for this?
And here's the thing with that too, is it was because when you do change the things you're going to find that the stuff that you worry about that doesn't matter, that you can't change, that's what we mostly worry about. But that's where the more negative thinking you have, the more you worry about it, the more it's going to come, because your brain doesn't know far from reality. It thinks you want that, so it brings more to you. But when you take action to the things you can, you'll find that solutions work themselves out, and that a solution actually comes as better, because the things you don't need to worry about and that you can't control, they're going to happen how they're going to happen. It's not going to change your life, and it's not going to matter. If it's not going to matter in 6 months or a year from now, why worry about it? Okay. If it's something petty, just do what you can do and then move on, because your life is your journey and it ain't nobody else's to live. All the unnecessary drama and BS that goes along with it, just filter it out, because it doesn't matter.
I want to jump back to something you talked about a few moments ago. We were touching base again back on your morning routine. And I truly believe that the morning routine that we put in place is so powerful.
Yes.
Do you have a particular morning routine? Do you have something you get up every morning and do, say, or think?
Not so much a morning routine, because I work second shift, and a lot of times after work is when I'll do my business stuff. So I'm usually up till 4 or 5 in the morning before I go to sleep. So I'm usually going to bed around then. But what I'll do is I get back up about 10:30 in the morning. I sit quietly. I ground myself so I can deal with people, because having PTSD, I have to ground myself before I can deal with anybody and any stress. Because when I first wake up and I've had a nightmare, especially the last thing. I'm still disoriented. I don't know which reality, because ultimately, when your subconscious goes into a dream, that's just as much real as this world is too, and we don't understand that. So, and when it's that real, it's because you were actually there and don't even, you don't even realize it's not just a dream. So I have to remember which, where I'm at here, and focus myself in. But I ground myself so I can take some deep breathing exercise. I meditate. I do take supplements, like I'll take some ashwagandha, shilajit stuff. And everything I take is natural. I take some of that monotonic gold, and then I just mainly get focused on what I need to do, and then I'll go outside and I'll walk around out here, because I live across from Daniel Boone National Forest. So I get out in nature, I'll walk a little bit, get some fresh air, and I'll usually make a couple videos, work on a few things, small things that I can get done that I know I'm going to finish before work. Because if I don't finish something, it drives me nuts all day, and then that's all I'm thinking about. And when I'm at that job, I want to think about that job. When I'm working on my business, I think about my business. So I have to switch gears. So I just make sure I get everything done that I can that's going to make me be okay with, like, I got something accomplished. I took a small step towards this goal, and that'll be enough. Because here's the thing, you're not going to finish your big goals overnight. You have to break them down into small tasks, because if you don't, you get overwhelmed, and that's where you drop things. When you try to take on too much. But if you take those goals and you break them down into smaller, manageable tasks, that's what they call SMART goals. And then you can manage them, and then you feel accomplished, and you start seeing results because you actually did it to completion. So you got to break those down. And that's what I do. I just break down and do little things here and there that, push me a little bit further. Whether they were significant or not doesn't matter, because those significance build up, It's just like saving money. When you save a little bit of money, and eventually over time it builds up and it compounds. It's the same thing with doing working on your goals. Is when you break them down to smaller, manageable tasks, the more you build up, they compound and they get better.
Let's take a moment, and I want to talk about relationships, because that is can be a delicate area coming out of recovery and into your transition of life. How have you managed to either start to re-see relationships and change your relationships with people, or develop new relationships now that you've made these changes? Walk through your life,
As far as romantic relations, I treat them all the same. First of all, it doesn't matter if it's romantic, friendship, or family. I've even gotten rid of family members because they were not healthy for my peace, and my peace means everything. If you're going to be toxic, or we can't sit down and have an adult conversation, and that's okay. I'm not going to get mad about it. I'm not going to get upset anymore, because I used to get upset about it and freak out and be like, why did you? No, I know why. Why it is, and it's okay. But I'm going to put you where I know where you stand, because I will let everybody know where they stand with me at all times. But I treat them all the same. As if it's toxic, I'm not going to have it in my life. If you have some friends that are there for you when they need something, and they're not there for you, those, I know where they stand. So I just keep them at a distance. Yeah, they're good people, but I don't need them too close to me, because then, I want to start, I'll start taking advantage of myself, is what happens. And then I have those, like, as far as romantic relationships, if you're first out of recovery, don't do it. Takes time. In the last 8 years since I left my ex-wife, I've been in 2 relationships for just a few months. And when they were toxic, I left, because I knew they weren't good for me. And I didn't continue on with them, because ultimately toxicity is the quickest way back to relapse. So in the last 8 years, I've been in 2 like 6-month relationships, and that's it. I've kept single mostly by choice until I find the right person. And, I've dated here and there. And if the person, they might have something that they believe in that, just isn't, that I don't want in my life, I'll be like, there's no hard feelings here, but I don't need that in my life. I need consistency. I need effort, just like anybody else does, and I deserve that. I know my worth, so no hard feelings, but I'm going to part ways, and a lot of times I'll get, well, can we still be friends? And for me, no, because I'm not going to be a part-time boyfriend. I'm not going to be your emotional support while somebody else is getting all the benefits. We don't do that. I'm looking for my person. And let's face it, if I find that person, I'm not going to disrespect them by talking to somebody I dated before, because that's not right. It's not okay. I don't talk to my exes. I give that person that respect and my full attention. And I believe that's where we get wrong, because then when we're in recovery, we still have these toxic people around us, and we start getting in multiple relationships, and then this backfires and that backfires, and it's really ultimately all on us, because we're allowing all this to happen to us, instead of just looking at saying, okay, I don't need this in my life. There's things you need to heal. There's things I'm still working on. And if you're not at my level of healing and where I'm at in my journey, then you can't be with me because you're not going to understand what I'm doing. It's not that you're not a good person. It doesn't mean that you don't deserve love, because you do, but you're just not going to be on my level. And if you're not on my level, then it's gonna never going to work, because you're going to think that I'm always looking down on you or talking down on you when I'm just trying to be supportive and help you. But it's going to seem condescending because you don't understand what I'm saying.
How important to you are, I would say, the top 6 people that you have closest to you? I call it for myself my round table. I'm always assessing who's sitting at my round table. But coming from your perspective of life, how important and crucial, especially coming out of recovery, are the people that you surround yourself with?
It's funny that you say that, because I follow Renee Rodriguez, who's a big speaker on influence and wealth and things like that. And there's a lot of it's influence and interpersonal relationships. And he says the 5 people you have around you the most will tell you exactly where you're at in life, because out of the 5 people, like, you're going to be, one of them's going to be the least wealthy, the least healed, and then there's going to be one that's going to be the most. And out of those 5 people, you're probably going to be the most healed. But because there's the old saying that you're held by the company you keep. So, like, that's why rich people hang out with rich people, because their ideas rub off on them. They start acting like them. They start mimicking their movements. They start taking advice, and that's how they become bigger. So so I keep my circle very small and tight. I do have friends, but I don't go hang out with them a lot because they're not even anywhere near me. I still like them. I'll talk to them, say hi, how you doing, visit for a few minutes. But the people I want closest to me are people that are in the same journey I am, or the people that are business minded, because I'm trying to work a business and I'm just learning it. So I need mentors and things like that. So I try to keep people around me that know more than I do, have been down the same road and overcome, and to teach me. And that's because you're not held by the company you keep, but you are affected by the company around you. Everybody around you affects everything you do, because if you get distracted or anything like that, and they say, hey, let's go out and party, you're going to start going out and partying because you don't want to disappoint nobody. So everything you do is directly correlated with the people around you, and it does affect you, your whole environment. That's why I'd rather stay by myself and focus on what I need to. And if somebody's trying to pull me away and take too much of my time, I'll be like, look, I can't do this. I like you, you're cool, but I can't do this because I got to stay focused, because we are easily distracted. People's attention spans are 30 seconds at a time now, but it has a huge impact. Your environment, everything around you affects it. That's why when you're in recovery, you have to stay in recovery, you have to change everything, your people, places, the things you did, your habits, your behaviors, your patterns, your mindset. You have to change your whole outlook, or it'll never work.
Let's charge ourselves a little bit forward here. And I would love to know, what do you have going forward? What is your next goals? What are your ambitions going forward? Where do you see yourself moving forward from here now?
Well, in order to advance myself a little bit further, I just got a scholarship to start December 2nd, provided I pass the pre-course, but I got a scholarship to do a 2-year degree in AI software programming. The reason why I'm doing that is because I always build my own electronics. I love programming. I've dabbled in it and I've learned a little bit, but I need a structured teaching method, because I do get distracted and go on to other things. I get hyper fixated, like you said earlier. So, but the whole thing's paid for. And so I figure if I get it, use it, because even somebody just starting out of school can make $100,000 a year at a normal job. But if I work for a company for, say, a year, and I get that real world experience, I can take these skills into my own business. I can build apps for other people that could help, or other businesses. So I'm using it as a stepping stone to project myself further. So I'm going to be pretty busy with that. And I still got to work a full-time job too. So I got to balance those two. So that's my next goal, is to learn that skill, with the AI and the Python programming. So that way I can, it'll not just invest in my future as far as the job goes, but I can use it for my business too. So, and then I can just sit at home and play on a computer all day and get paid for it.
Well, first off, congratulations on that. That is a big feat. And you just kind of keep seeming to smash through things one after another here. And as we talked about earlier, doors are opening for you. This seems like a really good place to bring our conversation full circle. And at the end of every one of my podcasts, I like to pose a really deep and powerful question. And I can't wait to hear your answer to this.
Okay.
The question I pose to everybody is, what is your definition of truly living your best life?
My definition of living truly your best life is living in your unapologetic, authentic self, true self, who you are, no filters, no shame, no guilt, living who you are and not caring what other people think, because that's a prison in itself. People say, you're so weird. Okay. That's me. I don't have no filter. It's a strength and a weakness. I say what's on my mind, whether it hurts feelings or not. But I am me. But you know where I stand, and you know where I'm at with it. There's no guessing around me. So it's living your unapologetic, true, authentic self, being truly transparent, being accountable, and just being yourself. That's the best way you can live that life. Is just be yourself and provide that joy for yourself, because happiness is an inside job.
Mike, your story has been inspirational. What you have done and been able to transform is just a miracle in itself. Before we wrap up our podcast here, I would like to give you the opportunity to leave anybody in recovery, walking through addiction, who is thinking about putting the drugs down and changing their life. One last piece of advice, one last golden nugget.
That would be, the first step is the hardest, but take it. It's worth it. And keep going. Wayne Gretzky once said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take that shot, because you never know what's going to happen, but keep going. The only failure in life is not doing anything at all. So you're going to fall, you're going to make mistakes, get up and retry it, do it a different way, learn, figure it out. Take Thomas Edison, look at how many times he failed and he kept going. Don't give up. That's important.
Mike, you filled me with inspiration, and this has been a beautiful conversation that I know that there's going to be somebody out there who resonates and hears this and really takes it to heart. So Mike, thank you so much for the conversation. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's a wrap on today's episode. A heartfelt thank you to our guests for showing up with honesty, depth, and wisdom. And thank you for listening in. I hope something in this conversation stirred something in you, a memory, a reminder, or maybe even a return to a part of yourself that's been waiting. If you enjoyed this episode, can I ask a quick 30-second favor? Share it with someone you know, someone who might need to hear this message too. And don't forget to explore past episodes. There's so much more waiting for you there. Until next time, I'm your host, Bryan White, and this is The Return Project.